drop-off area in the front. The high school entrance would be right here, and that would be adjacent to the Library Media Center.
And it would be the auditorium then that would be down on the
Yes,
left?
correct, right here. Yep. So again, Main Street academic wing of the high school, Library Media Center, auditorium, cafeteria, and all of the gymnasium would be out over here off the screen.
And that's just the back entrance that we've talked about to enter Main Street.
Yeah, the parking lot out in that back area accommodates about 450 cars. It's significant. That's where we envision all faculty for both schools, all faculty, all staff, and the number of high school students that drive to school parking there as well. And certainly off school hours, it's going to, those of you who've been around for a while know that the schools get a lot of after-school hour use. So all of those activities that Ms. O'Connell mentioned a moment ago, weekends and such, this is really the area that's, in my mind, really the heart of the school.
And again, that's just the really beautiful state-of-the-art auditorium that our children deserve to have for their productions. And it, again, could house just over 600 students, 650 or so students or community members. It will be designed similar to the picture that you see there, including a, forget what that's called, the top walk area for lighting.
Catwalk.
The catwalk, including a catwalk area for lighting for the maskers group, and hopefully the middle school groups as well. Definitely the middle school groups.
Yeah. So take a good look around. Where you are right now could be replaced by this. We had a couple of, the architects who've been working with did a nice job just supplying with some additional pictures of, again, all the possibilities. What could this entry pavilion look like? Those look like some nice benches up there, just after school hours, kids waiting for mom or dad to come and pick them up, just real community oriented. Science labs, I think it's safe to say for both schools, but I can speak best from the perspective of the high school. We have a very vibrant science program here. 49 science classes running currently that are being serviced with 2 science labs. Very inadequate. The proposed building would have 6 science labs for the high school. And not only would there be more of them, but they would be increased dramatically in their size. Right now, an existing science lab is just over 800 square feet, about 820 square feet. A new science lab would be about 1,440 square feet. Significant in its size, increase in its size. We're going to show you some more detailed schematics of what a science lab would look like in just a moment, but not only the number increasing to the level that we believe that it needs to be, but also just state-of-the-art science facilities for the many lab sciences that are offered. Similarly, general classrooms, just all of the classroom spaces, Mrs. O'Connell referred to them as the blue spaces on the floor plan. There are classrooms now that are sized at 600, as small as 634 square feet. So if you think of your own home maybe, and think about what your living room, dining room combination square footage is, and then think about 26, 28 teenagers and a teacher, and all of the things that go on in a classroom going on in a space that size, it can be really, really tight. And while there are others that go up to about 750 square feet, they're still pretty tight. So all of the classrooms in the new building would be of about 850 square feet. And again, this graphic is just used to show you, the substantial increase that would afford in the size of an average general classroom.
Yeah, and again, the Library Media Center, that just gives you a little bit of a visual of what it may look like. I'm not sure how many of you have visited the Library Media Center at the middle school, but it does not look like that. And the Media Center at the high school could use some modernization. So we're hoping for just a really nice space, a welcoming space for kids to congregate in the afternoons, to do some studying, do some planning, do some researching. And the 2 school librarians have been working hours and hours, visiting other schools, talking with other librarians, really giving some thoughtful time to what they think a 21st century library media center should look like. So it's very exciting.
Okay, this is a floor plan now of the high school academic wing. Again, it's 3 stories tall, and they're very similar. The 3 stories are very similar. Essentially, as was the case with the floor plan that Ms. O'Connell went over for the middle school, the blue spaces represent classrooms. The purple spaces also represent classrooms for very specific use in special education. The green are science labs. And the red are tech lab spaces, excuse me. And the one distinctive difference is this space here. That's that long distance learning lab. That would actually, you would feed into the long distance learning lab right off of Main Street. So as you continued into that high school academic wing down Main Street, if you went just a little bit further, you'd walk right into the long distance learning lab. And that was the big glass structure on the outside that you saw on the flyby. So, you know, we've worked to design these classroom spaces in almost like a pod-like structure, so that teachers are working very closely with each other, students are working very closely with each other, but they might be working interdisciplinary in their approach to learning. It could be, you know, science teachers, math, English, social studies, all working together as a unit, sharing students, sharing spaces, and sharing resources. Much more efficient than we currently have. This is just a rendering of what a classroom wing would look like. So if you could picture this being an exterior wall, these would be classrooms, not all, you know, not all that much different other than them being much more modern and much larger. You know, a classroom in a lot of ways what we all imagine them to be. What I think is different here is that in the middle of the pod is what we're referring to as a flexible collaboration space. This is almost like a little knee wall, I would call it. It's not quite a full wall, more of a bench area. It definitely defines the space, but it doesn't isolate it. So we envision students, you know, maybe they're working on a lesson here as a full class, and we see this happen now, that students may leave the classroom, go to another place in the building to do a little work as a small group, then come back to the larger classroom. But where they're going is not a space that's anything like this. It's not designed for it. You know, it's a table in the lobby that they're working at, sitting on the stone wall out here. It's just, you know, not the kind of space, not the kind of learning that we would hope would take place for a community like this in this day and age. What we also have is here is a teacher planning space. Again, because classrooms are going to be very flexible in their use, our vision is more that teachers are collaborating with each other around a central space, and there is one of these in each pod as well. So that's the intent of this slide for you. This is just a view, kind of looking down through the roof, a view of what a science lab would look like. Again, there would be 6 of these. You can tell it's quite large. What is shown here is the ability for us to have kind of the lecture station here for the class, you know, come through to a lab station. You know, the students work on their labs. They come together, you know, back into the classroom to discuss what the findings of the lab are. You know, much more efficient, much larger, much more up to date, and many more of them than we currently have. And while we're currently offering 49 science classes here at the high school, I don't see that number going down at any time. It's only going to go up. So the need for this is pretty significant in my mind. I'm not going to talk about this. So I'm going to leave that to the esteemed member of our committee, who's also a member of the Finance Committee, Mr. Don Keller.
Thanks, Don. Come on up. Please don't boo. You've heard the good news.
And the other side of it isn't really bad news. I think it's what we would expect in a project of this scope. Come on over to the next slide. As Jerry had mentioned, the total project cost is estimated at $107.8 million. And the state, we fully expect when they meet next week, will approve the project and approve the funding of 51.49% of the eligible cost. There are about $12 million worth of costs in the project that are not eligible for reimbursement. the wastewater treatment plant, the superintendent's facilities, items like that, some limits they place on the amount that they will reimburse for site work and for construction of the building and so forth. So there's about $12 million in costs that are not deemed eligible. So the town share, it's estimated at between $58 and $60 million. It's probably going to be closer to the $60 million than the 58, because the other side of that, the amount that the MSBA will reimburse us, is probably going to be about $47 million. The difference falls in what is built into the budget for contingencies. There's over $4 million built in for contingencies. We're going to go on the assumption that if we need to spend those contingent dollars, that they're probably not going to be reimbursed because they would be spent on things that either fell over a cap on the individual spending in the project, or it's something that we had to do that's outside of the scope. As a committee, we're going to try to limit, of course, how much of those contingent dollars is spent, because we would much rather have not spent any of them and bring the project in where it's not $60 million cost to the town, but $56 million. It's not realistic that we're going to be able to hold all of that back. So we're looking at, as I say, is $47 million reimbursement from the state and a $60 million cost to the town, which makes up the $107 million. The impact on the taxpayer for the average house in town, which is valued at about $450,000, the average cost would be $700. We don't all own the average house. We own more, and we own less. So to put it in another context, if you looked at your tax bill this year, it's going to be about a 10.75% increase to cover the cost. So whatever your tax bill was, and you bump it up by 10.75, that's what your cost is going to be. Another way of looking at it is the cost per $100,000 of assessed value, and that's about $155. So we each have a way of kind of figuring what this is going to cost us, but the benchmark is the average house of $450,000 and $700. Not an inexpensive project, but we're getting an awful lot for it. I'm very impressed with the plans and the work that's been done by the architects and the diligence of the committee, and just questioning and challenging as we've gone along. And I expect that will continue through this very long project. This is going to run for a number of years. Question then is, how do we pay for it? Ultimately, it's the selectmen and the treasurer that will decide what the bonding arrangement will be. But we've had discussions with the selectmen, and it looks like what we're looking at is doing a hybrid bonding on the project. And what I mean by that is that we will bond the first $50 million of the project immediately. And the reason for doing that immediately is that we're at historic low interest rates. We should be able to get an interest rate of around 4%. Our bond counsel, our bond advisors tell us that's a pretty low rate. We don't know how long that's going to be there. At some point in time, interest rates are going to start moving up again. So we would bond the first $50 million, because we know we're going to spend that. And then we would bond up to another $10 million, depending upon what we need. And we won't know how much of the total $60 million we're going to spend until we're progressing through the project. So that will be drawn down as we need to draw it down. And we've assumed that the cost of that money is 5%, because it's going to be in the future. All of those, the interest rates obviously are not known at this time and won't be locked in until we actually secure the bonding. The method of bonding, there are two ways of bonding. One is a level payment. If you think of your own mortgage payment on your own home, where you pay the same amount